Tá aparecendo que tá gravando. And we are recording. Our guest speaker today, on the occasion of International Women's Month, is Mr. Juca Magalhães. He holds a bachelor's in librarianship from UFES, and he's a writer, editor, musician, cultural producer, and a strong advocate for women's rights. Among articles in various publications, Mr. Magalhães has written Tubarão da Ponta ao Porto, Vitória em Transformação, and is currently at the verge of publishing a book about his late mother, the notable Maria Nilce Magalhães. She's the reason why we have him here today, to share and celebrate her life and bring light of her glorious existence to you students here in Europe. Please, you have the floor.
Hi. I never participate on a talk like this out of my country. I never been abroad in my life. I travel a lot around Brazil, doing lectures or playing music. Several places. Brazil is a very big country, but I never been abroad, never been in other countries, and never talk in English to people like this. This is a little bit awkward to me, so you excuse if I said something strange or out of place, you know. But I'm very pleased to be with you, to talking to you about a woman and power in this International Women's Day, because I have this story here. That happens 33 years in the past, when my mother, Maria Nilce Magalhães, she was a social columnist, a journalist. Here, she was also, she owned a newspaper with my father, and they work here with news and journalism. She was very famous, and she was ahead of her time. There was a time here that was not very common woman to work, especially when she began back in the 60s. Especially in journalism, there was only men, and she was one of the first, especially one of the first to be very successful. She was very famous. She was like a celebrity in here, and she was very beautiful and very feminine. And throughout his career, she always advocate, as you said, the rights of women uh, to be equal with men in the work. Um, and she used to gather uh, other women like her to in the International Women's Day in a very big party every year. And in 1989, she made a very big event. I don't know how to say. Is it right?
Event is
Gathering,
right.
yeah, gathering like 400 women, politicians, women, uh, every kind of woman that work that was in the market, and they were very powerful. But then, about 5 months later, 3 or 4 months later, she was murdered in a homicide. Um, I don't know exactly the words when they hire people to kill another. You know,
Like
it's
murder for hire. Murder for hire.
murder for hire. It was, and it was very difficult because in that year, uh, Brazil was a military dictatorship about 25 years. And that year was going to be the first time, the first election of a president. since 1964. And the organized crime here was infiltrate his people in the politics and everything. And she was a pain in the ass of the people, because she didn't like she saw people uh, that was of the crime trying to be, and they were accepted in the society, which is very dangerous thing, and she criticized that very much. But there was they were a group of people, very dangerous people and powerful people, and so she was murdered, and in July of that year, 1989. And the investigation was very inconclusive at the end, because of the power people, the politicians, the corruption, and she was then blamed for her own death. They say that she talked too much, that uh, she was not a serious person.
Yeah, and that is something that I want to point out, which is really relevant to the times we're living now, where there's a lot of victim blaming, and women are often blamed for crimes against them. So I feel like her story, although it was decades ago, it is still very relevant. And so it's important that her legacy lives through you so you can continue that
Yeah.
legacy.
Yes, and I am the only one. We are four. Uh, she had four children, and I'm the only one who stayed here. I have two adopted sisters too, but they also go away to live very far. One of my sisters, Mila, she was with my mother in the day, in that day of the murder. In She never took it well, you can imagine. So she married an English guy and go to live abroad 1994, and never returned to live here in Brazil. But yeah, the people still blames my mother for the murder. The, blames, they say that she had something to do with that, but she had nothing to do with that. She was not a criminal. She was not for organized crime. She she was just a journalist,
And
and
this is the thing that fascinated most of her fans, was the fact that she was against all things of lies and hypocrisy. And one of the things that I remember watching TV, and she had a show and she was being interviewed, and somebody asked her if something like, did you say something mean about these people? Did you investigate their lives or something? And she said, hey, when I don't like somebody, I don't even want to see their dogs, let alone be talking about them. Or I will advocate for the truth. I'll talk the truth the whole time. And that's, she was very truthful. And
yeah,
sometimes people can't handle that when you say you can't handle the truth. So
yeah,
she was all about that. And I remember her from, I lived in that same neighborhood, Praia do
yeah,
Canto. So I remember seeing her and how beautiful she was, and the women were jealous, and the men were fascinated. So she was a celebrity. She really was.
yes, yes. A very strange kind of celebrity, because Victoria is an island, a very tiny island. We now have 2 million people in the Great Victoria. They say Great Victoria is out of the island, but then it was smaller. São Paulo has 21 million people, Rio de Janeiro, 13 million people. So they are very bigger cities. So the people here are a little bit conservative, and the mashes, how to say?
Male chauvinism, male chauvinism. Yes.
Yeah, is very strong here still, including with women. They say uh, they want to confine the woman in a certain place, you know, and the woman is who is free, openly free, and who goes to talk to men equal, especially in her time, was a very strange thing, and the people gossip and talk too much about it. But yeah, she always said that the people didn't want to know the truth, and they wanted to punish who said the truth. She used to say that people like the lies better, which is sad, you know, because with these lies, the organized crime took the power here on our state, on our city, and then they rule in the 90s. They say that many people did know that, but our city, being an island on the Atlantic Ocean, uh, had many ports. Some people say smugglers, drug smugglers, and authorities, national authorities, say that here, Vitoria, our city, was the number one point of drugs, going out drugs to Europe and USA in Brazil. And many people don't know that, and many people say that's not true. But I believe that because here is not only this problem is relevant, but the corruption is a real problem. But then,
I want you to focus on that aspect when you talk about her journalism years and what kind of things she reported on and what kind of newspaper that was, so people can have an idea.
it was a regular newspaper, but it was little. There were two other newspapers who was bigger, um, and they have more money and better equipment. So, but and she was a famous person, so everybody reads her column. Uh, there's a lot of talking about it still today, of things that she wrote, because she was very funny and very extravagant, and she make funny of a person, some politicians that have bad breath, or some politicians that have fear to fly and have to go to Brasilia on car or bus because he didn't stand to go into a plane. And it was funny that she made a lot of fun remarks on people that was very popular. But other than that, she have a very keen way of describe the society and persons. Uh, they call the habits. Uh, she likes to she walks on the uh, in the beach every morning, and it was a happening when she does that. Uh, in the beach Camborique we have
It
here.
was an event because she had the most beautiful clothing, and she had
Yeah,
the very creative, interesting outfits. She was also a fashion icon in our community. So
exactly. Yeah,
that's probably the part of the reason why everyone knew, and people, I remember people would stop their cars to look at her, and she was super fit. I am now 49 years old, and she passed away when she was 48, right?
exactly. 48 years
She
old.
was
She,
always in top shape, and so that always generated a lot of jealousy and admiration.
yeah, it was not very common at that time, 48 is an old woman in her time. Not today. But in her time, yes, only and men also, né? And yeah, but I made a book about it. I spent about 8 years interviewing people, um, police, the police people, the other journalists, friends of her, and politicians, every kind of friends, every kind of people. And I also studied a lot the newspapers of time and magazines and everything to restore what really happened in her murder. Because always there's this question: who kills Maria Nilsi? Who kills? Who did it? And the police say that they can't point out. They point out one guy, but this guy, he was not the number one of the murder. He was like I don't know, como se diz, operativo do crime.
So he was the guy. He was a part of it, but he wasn't the one behind it. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, exactly. But so the federal police, they could not point out the one behind it. They say no, it was this guy. But and so I made a book telling all the story, but I still not publish it yet. I'm trying to find a editor, but here in Brazil is very difficult. Very difficult if you're not a very known person, like a celebrity in the television, on the movies, or radio, something. They don't even want to know if you write well, of your good story. No, no, because people here don't read much in Brazil. And there's a crisis also in the book business. So I had this incredible difficulty to publish my book by an editor, a good press, So 2 years looking for it. I hired literally agent. I don't know if this, but didn't help at all. They always looking for the new Paulo Coelho. It's very frustrating because my
Yeah,
story.
Paulo Coelho is incredibly popular all around here.
I
And
know, I know, and he's a very good writer.
he
I
really
like
is.
Magal. I like it.
But
I like
when
it.
will we ever find the new one if we don't open doors for other writers?
Yeah, but I'm not the new one, Paulo Coelho, com certeza. Not for sure. And I don't only want to tell my story. It's so frustrating until now. And so I gathered a team. I had a lawyer for because I have all juridical aspects of the crime, of the investigation, and there's a lot of matters which are difficult to say, like the corruption on the police, and we have to be very careful to approach this aspect, not to break the law, including, and then I have other people to make the design of the book, and now I'm looking for sponsors to do it.
But let's talk about you for a while. I want you to tell our students here about your work in music and cultural productions and all of that.
Yeah, I work now in a non-profit organization. We have projects on music. We have a symphonic orchestra only with women's. uh, uh, Orquestra de Mulheres do Espírito Santo, which is a very beautiful and popular group. And we have two chorals, one kids and one for adults. And I co-repetitor pianist on these choirs, and also help them with the English, because sometimes we have English music, sometimes they sing in Latin, sometimes sing in French, or sometimes in German. We did a Mendelssohn piece last year, which was in German, and we also looking for help with pronunciation. Uh, but it is all, very common when you saw choirs of other countries singing in Portuguese with very strong accent. I think it's pretty. And
Yeah,
then
what happens with that is that I teach international English and here in Norway, and this is the class that this is the audience for for this talk. We focus on intelligibility. So if people can understand you and you can hold a conversation where communication is promoted, it doesn't matter if somebody has an accent or not. So that's, and in music, when you sing, the words come out, the melody comes out, and that's what's important.
yeah, and our nonprofit organization is 10 years old. We have now a space to we're gonna uh, go in next month, um, and that's it. We work a lot with doing concerts, uh, all in classes and singing and stuff, and it's very good. And other than that, I'm doing this other projects with books. I have already 3 books published. Um, Back in the 80s, I was kind of rock and roll. I was in a rock and roll band here,
Yeah, I was
and
gonna ask you if that was you in the band. Yes, okay.
yeah,
Right. Talk about that a little bit because people here wouldn't know them.
yeah. I was a kid, and I had 20 years old about that. So we have a rock and roll band. I was a singer in that band and a composer. We have our own music, and we have some success in here in Victoria. But then my mother was killed, and in the end of 80s, so my life was flipped completely. I have to live another life. So I have to work with all the stuff, and I put the music aside for a while, And that was when I was to study librarianship and music more deeply. So I learned classical music, piano and stuff, and was close to our symphonic orchestra. And then in 2010, I published a book about the band. The story that was very funny. We were a bunch of kids dreaming about success and that stuff, almost famous stuff. And then the book is very funny, chama O Livro do Pó, because the band was named Angel's Dust, which in Portuguese is Pó de Anjo, Angel's Dust. And, and because it was the name of a drug and the stuff, wow, this is bad. Yeah. Uh, the next book I made was about our symphonic orchestra, because we have some projects with the orchestra. And one day, the conductor asked me to do a project about revitalization of the archives and stuff. And then I talked to him. Well, okay, what is the historic of the orchestra? I said, I don't have it. "Oh, how you don't have it? Oh, I don't have it. The people don't know. No, man, come on. Let's research that. It cannot be." And so I researched and I discovered all the things that matter in the beginnings of our symphonic orchestra here. And I made a book about them that was a really great book. Some conductors, our São Paulo, said that this is the only book about our orchestra in Brazil. It's a very good, important book, and very little known here, because people here still doesn't evaluate so much history and culture. And then we have here a port that is very important. The name of the port is Ponta do Tubarão. It's a point where when Brazil was discovered, have very sharks around it, and then they say a point of the sharks or something like that. Well, Victoria was a very little city back in the 60s, and then they decided to make a port there to trade ferrogusa, I don't say, iron
Iron, yes.
with Japan. And then they needed a port with deep waters. And so they made here. And it was the first great project in Brazil in that time. And it was the first great project that come to here, to where I live. So it gives a lot of development to the city. The city grows very bigger before that port was made and starts to shipping iron and metal and all this stuff to the world, including drugs. I don't know. And then when the port made 50 years old, 50, 50, right? They decided to make a book about it. And they hired me to make the research. And there was a team that was going to do that book. There were journalists. There were a very good office that was doing the graphic design, and a guy who was to write the story, but they didn't like what the guy was writing, and started to search for another guy to write the book. And they, in some point, asked me, "Hey, do you want? You can do this book, don't you?" So I say yes, and we made that book. It was released in 2016. Was my last book published,
Right.
and then
So this was recently published, but you did the research throughout a period of years.
yeah, I did research, and then I wrote the book, and it was published in a. It is a very beautiful book. Is I don't know what it is. I think it's another room. I got a lot of books house, and then I decided to do the book, the finish the book about my mother. I was already working on that and talking to people about around 2013. I was I interviewed a journalist that write about police stories. No, his name was Pedro Maya, and I knew who he was, and I know he perhaps could have some good stories about what happened, and he agreed to talk to me. And for my surprise, I discovered that he was friend of my mother when they were young, and he taught me a lot of stuff I didn't know, a lot of stuff. And I say, you don't know what happened. You don't know what happened. You were fooled by the lies they told all over these years. And I was so angry with him. No, Pedro, you're not right. No, 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 no. You were fool. You were fool. And so I was beginning on the process of investigation and research to the book. And I imagined that, okay, there must be other stories. I'll go to the bottom of this. But when I was researching and researching, and I was discovering that Pedro was right, who was right. The story he told me was the truth, and I discovered that I didn't know what happened about my mother, and I discovered, and I know today that mostly of people don't know, including my sisters and my uncles and all the family. They also was fooled by the lies all over the years. If you go to Wikipedia, the story is there telling a lot of lies, telling that she was about to say that some high class people was smuggling drugs and she was to tell, so they sent to kill
All
her,
right, so
you're to tell that.
this is a really good point because I struggle with the fact that a lot of people nowadays, when you talk about research, in our days we'd go to the library and pick up lots of books and read or read the newspapers, and nowadays they Wikipedia for everything, and now you're telling us that Wikipedia entry has lots of flaws in it.
Yeah, because in the Wikipedia, you take some article from a journal or from a magazine, and you put that as a reference. But sometimes that journal, that magazine was telling a lie, or not entirely the truth, or distorts some history, and you assume that was the truth, but it was not like that. And so I imagine when I succeed to publish this book, people will be very surprised with the stories I have to tell. And it's very hard. Cannot tell them that so openly, because the police did not investigate the people that they have to investigate, because that people was very powerful, and they was about to take control of the state. That was organized crime. And so it's very hard to me know today what really happened, and cannot openly talk about that. So in the team that I gather to publish the book is a lawyer that will help me. I already told about that, to help me with these juridical aspects of the case.
Yes. It will be awesome to read your book when it comes out. It will be fascinating. Well, we're approaching now 30 something minutes. I'd like to thank you so much for this. And
Cool.
it's been really wonderful to hear from you. I think it's important that we remember your mom for what happened, but also to celebrate the legacy that she left behind, being a strong and powerful woman, and to not just do what as they say, but do you and be yourself. So I feel like it's a beautiful legacy that she leaves behind, and I think it's wonderful that you're keeping that going.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So
And I want to invite people to go to my YouTube channel. I have a lot of videos there, of her parties, of interviews, mine interviews, her interviews. Juca Magalhães. So your only
what I'll
research
do, what
there.
I'll do, I'll put your link to your YouTube channel underneath this video, because I'll have your video. Your video will be shown to my class on the 18th of March. So on that, and I will put a link to your channel.
Okay, good.
So we'll have information that will be able to, because I'm sure they will be interested in finding different things out, and they will be curious. So it will be a very interesting thing for them to do. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for this. I'm gonna stop the recording, but we'll stay in touch, and I'll message you, and I'll give you feedback on how the interview was received.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye. Hello,